feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Monday morning, it's November 18th after the Wolves' 121-17 win over the Phoenix Suns on Sunday afternoon. And after a week of Kyle pause while I was in Portland, I'm back home and we're back on our normal rotation this week, which is Kyle on Fridays, Bird on Thursdays, Chris on Wednesdays, and Jace for his normal Monday morning pod. Jace, I feel like this team is weird to talk about right now. It's been a bizarre last four games, kind of two convincing losses given the opponent, and then two kind of unconvincing wins in some ways. I want to talk about that, but we should, as we discussed right before we hit record here, we do need to start with Randle and the buzzer beater, and not just the buzzer beater, but the game that he had there. 35 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, 6 of 9 from 2, 5 of 11 from 3. It was a team best in plus minus. We can talk about the buzzer beater itself. The most interesting Randle thing to me right now is he's killing bigs. Teams that try to match up with him against bigs. You look at kind of his 4 best games this season. That's the 2 Kings games, right? So the first time they guarded him with DeRozan, okay, that's not a matchup. He killed that. So then the second time they play him, they start Alex Len to guard him next to Sabonis. So they start 2 centers. The Kings start 2 centers. After that game started, I was like, what?
Yep.
And then Phoenix does the same thing last night. They start Nurkic and Plumlee, so Plumlee can guard him. And then I was just like going through looking at him like, what's his next biggest game? The Toronto game. Okay, they put Scotty Barnes on Rudy Gobert, and they had Jakob Poeltl guard Randle. So this is kind of like the Cat thing, right? Remember, we would always talk about that, where like some teams think it's this good idea,
right,
to guard him with the 5, when at least I don't know what the Randle reality is. Maybe he'll kill 4s, but we kind of got to that point with Cat where it became the better option to guard him with 4s and bring help, and both of those guys play differently. But I didn't mention this to you before we started recording, but I know we talked about this a lot with Kat, and I'm curious what you are seeing is behind the big Randle games, and I guess specifically what was behind the big Randle game last night.
Yeah, there is like a bigger overarching point that I think fits well into this that we can get to. But just to start, I do think like we noticed this before when Julius Randle would play the Wolves. Like they didn't have anybody to guard him either, and it's not a surprise that other teams don't either, because it really does kind of fall into a center's too big, a wing is too small. Like you actually need a power forward, and there aren't that many teams that start power forwards.
You need a bulky one.
Yeah, you need like an Aaron Gordon, and Aaron Gordon oftentimes would be like, well, you got to guard Ant, or whatever, like stuff like that. And that not that many teams have it, like the just roster construction these days. And like, but I do think you see that the center thing is not the answer. And it's just like Cap, because the center can't get close enough on the 3-point line to respect that. And Randall's hit that in a lot of games at a high enough clip where you really have to respect it. And then if they do press up at all, and now it's an easy blow by because the foot speed just isn't there. Like as much as they're different players, like there are enough similarities. Like nobody's exactly like Cat, but Randle has enough similarities of like can hit the 3 ball, very comfortable driving past you if you push up too much, especially when the advantage is easier. Like they'll drive in different ways. Obviously, like it looks very different when they do put the ball on the floor. But there are similar aspects there where it's like the center just doesn't work. But the small wing is the thing where like it was actually worth it for a team to try to put like a 3 on Cat and press up and be like, okay, now we can get that straight voltage. Like he'll use that off arm offensive foul, whatever. Where Randle is a little more deliberate, where it's like, okay, I'm actually just gonna like take 2 dribbles and now I'm just gonna start working you, like backing you down and getting to my spot. So I do think you need a 4 a lot of times to guard Randle, and if you have that, I think you can put Minnesota in a little bit more of a bind. But not many teams do. Like the Wolves did not in the past, and Randle would kill them too.
Yeah, I think about when Cat struggled against funky matchups, smaller guys, it was because it made him indecisive.
Right.
And I asked Finch about what has been behind the good Randle games today, and he said, or last night after the game, and he said being decisive. I'm gonna play this clip and then let's talk some more about this.
I think after all of Randle's really big games this season, you said the opponent didn't really have a matchup for him. Is that something that you think about in advance of the game and try to target, or is it something you kind of find amidst the flow of the game?
I mean, both. You know, we can anticipate what we might see out there lineup-wise. But yeah, it's also in the game. We try to recognize what's going on.
What do you think gets him in a rhythm in over the course of the game, Randle?
Being decisive and committing to his open threes. When he's playing like that, then it opens up his drive, his playmaking, and everything else.
So that's what kind of got me thinking about it. It's like, okay, being decisive and committing to his open threes. That's, you know, just being committed to go into your offense when you're on the perimeter and you're guarded by 5, right? Like that makes sense. Now, if he's guarded by a, you know, more of a wing type guy, they're going to be pressing up on that a little bit more. And I wonder if that is also then the right answer for his best games. Does that make sense? Like if he's not being guarded by a 5 that is going to be hesitant to get out there, or that he can use his speed to go by. I don't know. Maybe I'm just doing too much of the cat thing, because that's been such a,
I think it's
such a stop-start thing. Yeah,
it's what we're seeing though,
Yeah.
and this is where, before I go down this road, I do want to get into like the way that he went last night, and the way that Ant went last night, and the way that they went in the Sacramento game. Like I will say, like seeing two guys where it's very easy to just get them the ball at the top of the key, where like this wasn't always true with Cat. It's very easy to just give the ball to Randle or give the ball to Ant, and then they kind of get into their own offense. And having two guys like that on the court is proving difficult for a lot of teams to match up with in crunch time, and that's been very advantageous. I think Randle and Ant scored 13 of Minnesota's last 15 last night, Jaden Dunk being the only other bucket that wasn't by those two. They scored the last 12 points in overtime against Sacramento, Jaden's 3 being the bucket before that, and then they scored the last 12. Like they're
Jaden.
Yeah, you know, he's the only one joining the party. But their crunch time offense, even when like it's like these are tough shots, they now have two really tough shot makers who are comfortable creating their own tough shot and hitting it. And that is proving, it almost looks a little Kings-like of like, this isn't easy, but they're getting it, you know, and it's proving a way to win games that they have to win even when they're struggling right now. So I do think we're seeing that. Like maybe they will just be a better clutch time offense, because a lot of times clutch time offense is kind of ugly. Like that's true for a lot of teams. And now they're having more success in the mud, you know, because of those two. So I actually think that's maybe a little bit more of an underrated piece of Randle that Finch has talked about that has definitely come to fruition, that I definitely think should be recognized, because they're winning a lot of these tight games. Like they're 8-6 and they're winning a lot of the crunch time games, and they're winning it because they have two guys who, even when you defend the possession well, they can just hit a shot. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? Like they hit a lot of tip your cap shots, and they have two guys who just consistently can do that.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, with the multiple creators sort of thing. Plus you got Rudy who can screen. Rudy can play with both of them, right? He can create advantages for both of them. I think Mike, you know, understands how to play with both of them too there. If people forgot for some reason, like late game offense has been really a major struggle. It was a major struggle for the Wolves the last 2 years, because I do think, to the Cat versus Randle point, like Cat just had like less wiggle than Randle did there, you know, when you were just to give him the ball on the top. And it did have to be, with Cat, it was just a straight line drive. That's what you were getting there, unless you could create space for him to take a 3. And Randle, I mean, almost even more than Ant, because Randle can pass off of that a lot, particularly if he drags in 2 defenders. Like Ant gets 2 defenders all the time, but it's on the perimeter, and Ant kind of like retreats back, right, and then gets off the ball. Randle is seeking double teams in the middle of the floor, and then, you know, it throws that like 88-mile-an-hour slider out to McDaniels on the wing or whatever. So I think that is a good point, and it's a good thing, because I mean, if I'm being honest, like this Randle thing has been a roller coaster.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I'm like, oh, this and the defense, and
there are a lot of defensive possessions where you're like, that was really bad. And then
that's almost, the defense is almost a separate thing. I mean, like,
yes,
because that is not his thing, you know. But the Portland losses, like, kind of needed more from him offensively there too, and it kind of, I don't know, it's coming and going. In the aggregate, it's for sure been good. So I say that to mean it's a good reminder that even if the overall journey of Randle is a bit up and down, in that crunch time, the most valuable times, that's when you kind of get his most value, you know. And obviously we saw that last night.
It's like, it's And that probably is something that sets you up well for the playoffs. Like if you know, like there's a lot more times where you're going to end up playing that kind of offense in the playoffs. And it's like, if you have two guys you can rely on, then you're in a better spot. It's just like how the path to getting to crunch time is going to look different for sure. And I do just think the way they play basketball right now, like they're going to play a lot more crunch time games. So it's much better. It was like throughout the regular season last year, there wasn't that necessary. It was almost like you'd kind of fall out of that talking point because it'd be like, well, they haven't played a crunch time game in 2 weeks. You know, like, and then it was like good or bad in that one game. If it was good, you're like, problem solved. Now they're going to play a lot of them because when you can't get stops, when you don't rebound at a high rate, like when you turn the ball over at inopportune times, you're going to probably play a lot of crunch time situations. And they look maybe well equipped to handle it right now, even if I think things can get a little bit more refined offensively. I don't know if they will, but they're showing that they can win this way. The thing, I think now's a good time to get back to the Randle point you were talking about where like the matchups and we see it. And when the small pushes up on another three is taken away, but he can get inside and score. And you talked about the Portland game, how they needed more from him there. Like this is just, it's becoming very obvious to me that it's true for Ant and it's true for Randle. They can dominate their matchups if there is not someone deterring the offense at the rim. And we're seeing that a lot. We saw Donovan Clingan was the reason that Julius Randle did not give them enough against Portland. And it was kind of the reason Ant didn't give them enough against Portland because every time they went in there, you know, like even if they beat their matchup, or gained an advantage at least. Like it was such a deterrent that now it becomes such a decision-making situation at the rim and it puts a lot of pressure on you and you're not going to make the right decision a lot of times because oftentimes the shot, it gets swatted away. The pass, if it's like a pass to Rudy in tight quarters, like that's tough. We're just seeing that again and again. Like if you don't have a shot blocker, if you're a Sacramento, if you're a Phoenix, like if you're a Denver, like then those guys can get in there and they can finish through it because there's not really somebody there to reject it. If you do, like the offense is kind of stagnating because they oftentimes aren't making the right decision. And it's just harder. Like, and they just play such one-on-one basketball where you gain an advantage. And now that advantage is taken away. And it's not like this obvious double team. It's just somebody there at the rim. Life's harder. Like then the numbers kind of bear it out.
Yeah. Give those numbers in 1 second, but I just to like further put a picture to it. Like, so when I'm thinking about this and there's a rim protector there, whether it's, well, I guess with Ant, right? Okay. So Klingen's at the rim or whoever, like, Ant will stop the force of his drive, and that's when he'll go to the slow step. That's when he'll go to the Euro. That's when he'll try and finish underneath, right? Whereas if there is, who did he dunk on in the Kings game? What was that, Murray or something? Maybe that's not even like the example.
Yeah.
But
it was not a rim protector.
Yeah. That's the thing is like the forceful moments, and it doesn't even need to be a dunking on somebody. It's just like it's an attacking the basket without slowing down. In any sort of way that is happening when there's less of a big body there to deter him. And then with Randle too, it's a little bit different, but Randle then like when he gets down there, that's when he tries to finish like with the shoulder and the distance, right? With the arm. And it's not like Ant can't get to the slow step or the Euro. Like Ant's really good at that. And Randle's pretty good at like, getting a bump and finishing around that or through that, but not as good as they are just straight line at the basket, finishing with force there. And I think that's that's the basketball behind the numbers of why the rim protection players have really, kind of neutered this Wolves offense.
Yeah. So here are the numbers. Like, and
cool.
for reference, the Wolves this season, their offensive rating is 114. Like it's a top 10 offense. Pretty good. Like that's a good number. Randle and Ant are each at like 117, 116 for their personal numbers. Like very good. Here are the offensive ratings when the Minnesota's offensive ratings when these rim protectors are on the court. Clingan, those last two games in Portland, when Clingan was on the court, Wolves offensive rating 94.4. Anthony Davis in the opener, 106.5. Daniel Gafford in that Dallas game, 109.1. Not terrible, but not like it's hard to win games at 109. Wemby in the San Antonio game, 93.5. Yep. And then Bam in the Miami game, 77.1. Like these elite defensive players, like the Rudy-like defensive players, and at least in their impact around the rim.
Right.
It just swallows Minnesota up. It really does it takes Minnesota is good offensively because they have these two guys who can consistently get to their things. And if you're going to take those things away, then the counters are generally pretty simple offensively.
100%.
But now it's without like totally reconstructing your defense when you have these bigs. Like they're just helping down at the paint. It's not really like blowing up everything you're doing. It's not like you're just like sending a double where it's pretty easy to work off of that. Like it's pretty tough to be like, okay, they're protecting the rim. So now how do we expose that? It's not like an easy thing to expose. It is making the things that Minnesota usually does easily hard. And they haven't really found a counter to that yet.
Yeah. And we can picture those, like go through them. Okay. The Klingon was the one you said first, right? He had 8 blocks in that second game. And I got you running through them, and I'm picturing guys going down the lane there and it getting blown up there. The Wemby game, he really took away everything Rudy could do at the rim. You know, he's just bigger. He's just bigger than Rudy. Like I can picture that. Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo really shut off Julius Randle's water.
Right.
You know, and that was just being able to move with him, but also kind of finish higher than him at the rim and block shots, contest shots there. Was there another one on there?
Gafford, just like a more traditional rim protector.
Gafford. Yeah. Nothing like flashed to my mind there.
No. And that was the 109.
That
wasn't
that's
like
probably
that.
Ant.
Yeah,
That would probably be a good Ant one.
Just like the West Finals.
Mhm.
You know,
Yes,
that was exactly why Ant was struggling more in the West Finals than he did against Denver, who doesn't have a shot blocker. Then he did against Phoenix, who doesn't have a shot blocker. Like these are like those teams Minnesota gets such simple offense against, like, and they can go to these things at any time. That they're just much more reliable on that end, where like they really do need to develop a way in which it's like, okay, say these things get slowed down, where do we go next?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is like, what do you think? Like, what is the answer there?
I don't know. I tried to ask Rudy about that, and I'll look it up here in a sec. But I don't.
I think, I mean, part of it, this is just, I haven't totally thought this through, but like generally speaking, right? Like, let's think about it from the Wolves' perspective. All right, you want to, if Rudy's given the opponent problems at the rim, you want to do something to force him up. Right. And the Wolves should theoretically, with their pick and roll initiators in Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, and Dante DiVincenzo, all be shooting threats enough that if you set a good screen, the big better be up there. Otherwise, they're going to like 1-2 step into that shot. And I think the beginning of the season, right? What was Ant doing? You know, he was bombing, 6-7 threes like in the first quarter, hitting like 4 of them. And then naturally you just kind of start seeing more of that put 2 on the ball sort of thing. And which is actually bringing the big up, which is releasing pressure on the rim. I think the problem though is Ant gets sick of having 2 put on the ball.
Right.
In that situation, he wants to be able to attack downhill. So now he's just like, all right, the second guy's up, get off of it. When they do bring that big up, whoever's initiated, whether it's Ant, Mike, Dante, like, you got to be like, okay, here's our situation. Bam, bam, bam. There's nobody at the rim, quickly getting through that. The goal should be, we got the big up here, or we got 2 on Ant. Now we can play 4 and 3 on the backside. And I thought in the Sacramento game, we'll talk about that a little bit later too, because I want to talk about Conley playing a little bit better. But they took advantage of the team in pick and roll in that sort of way and played through that and got into the flow off of initial pick and roll, once kind of engaging them and playing 4 and 3 on the backside. That was such a part, not that the Wolves were a great offensive team last year, but so much of the great offense did come when they were playing well in pick and roll and forcing the defense to shift, right? That was good offense for the Wolves last season. And I think that's what they're trying to find here. I think the coaching staff knows everything we just talked about.
Right.
And those are all, but it's like, how do we ingrain this and go to it over and over again? How do we punish it? They have the offensive personnel to be able to punish it. You want to respond back on anything there? Or otherwise, grab my first break.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. Like, it is like, I think banking on the fact that the screen is always going to give you a big advantage depending on the defender, like that can kind of get blown up by guys who are good at getting around screens in certain matchups. It's why I think like in Oklahoma City, as currently constructed, if Chet gets back, will be really tough for Minnesota right now, the way they play offensively, just because of the way that
Boston on Sunday.
Yeah, Boston on Sunday is another one, but like now, like they don't have that shot blocker either, frankly, right now. Not like a Porzingis, like anyone anyway. But yeah, I guess I'll just get to this Rudy quote quick because I did ask him, like, how does the offense do it even when there's a rim protector. And Rudy said, I think regardless of who it is on the floor, we want to still attack the paint. I think we have guys that can finish against anyone, but through that, we also want to drive to kick out, drive to find the bigs. Ant has gotten better every year at making the right play, and he creates so much gravity when he attacks the rim that regardless of who it is, he's going to be able to create something good. Even if he misses the shot, it puts me in a position to rebound. That's why I keep telling him, sometimes the best shot, as long as you don't get it blocked too hard, sometimes the best pass is the shot as long as you don't get it blocked too hard. So we got to stay aggressive. I do think that's a big thing of like, even when like that help defender comes, that rim protector comes, like oftentimes then it is a read, but I do think that Ant hits a point in his drives where he has made the decision. Like how he is going to attack it. Like you said, maybe it's with the Euro step, maybe it's like the hard, I'm just going right through him here, or I'm going to pass it. I think he probably makes that decision a little too early at this point in his career, but that's kind of where they're at right now. And I think that's why it gives them trouble. And I understand Rudy sometimes being like, just go hard. And like, either we get the foul or like the odds are if you go hard, it's not getting swatted with great force. And if you just miss, like, then it is pretty easy cleanup for Rudy oftentimes. So like, but it's hard to have that type of force, I guess, when you do know what's coming.
And should theoretically be easier, one, as the season goes on, and two, when it's the playoffs. And I like,
it depends on matchup. I think, I mean, like, let's just go through it quick. Like, last thing on this, like, with that theory in mind, like, which teams, like, do they obviously, like, they probably should be able to create good offense against? Like, Golden State, not a problem. Like, even yes, Draymond's a great defender. Like, would give Randle probably some issues, but in general, like, Ant getting to the rim, they have nobody there. Like Sacramento, no. Denver, no, we've seen it. Phoenix, no, we've seen it. Houston, no, I don't think so. Sengun is blocking more shots this year, but I don't know if that's a small sample size. He's just not the guy that I would worry about. I think he'd probably get in foul trouble, but it's your Dallas. It's obviously your OKC with Chet and Hartenstein. Like, and then it's Memphis. I think Memphis probably too, with like a Jaren Jackson and a Zach Edey if they wanted to employ that more. Like, I think those are the only teams that I would be like, I don't know offensively if they could produce at the same level that they want to be a championship team against those opponents.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's going to be something to track, right? Like this is the thing. Those numbers, and like oftentimes, you give a 1 game offensive rating number and like, okay, what does that mean, Jace?
Correct.
But it totally. I didn't need those numbers to think what those numbers were saying. I was previously saying that. We'll keep going on this, but let me grab our first break so we don't go too long. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. And if the Wolves are on, the game will be on at Falling Knife on their projection screens, and they will have the sound on there. As we've been doing this for a while, there used to not be many places that had Wolves games on the TVs. When the Wolves are playing. Falling Knife has committed, I think, a couple more bars around town are now as well. But it's just cool to see the community that Falling Knife has created over there. I was just on Instagram this morning and flipping through their story, and just a bunch of people there last night watching the game. Just kind of, the Wolves don't play till Thursday, but I'm thinking about Thursday and then this weekend against Boston, a day game. If you are wanting to get out for these games, or also around around Thanksgiving, you want to take your family out to watch a Wolves game kind of in a bar environment, always consider Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. Today's show is also brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. Your Home Improvement Company, again, another longtime sponsor, and we know that you don't always have, not all of you have a home improvement need to go to, but at some point, maybe over the course of this season, there is going to be windows to replace in your house. Well, they got a buy 2, get 2 free window deal going on right now, and always, have affordable prices and affordable financing for these things. They also have a deal going on that I've told you about before with the bathroom conversions. Maybe you're at home, you got that basement bathroom that you've been waiting to take care of. Well, this winter, it's something you can get done. 30% off again on simple tub to shower conversions or full bathroom remodels. Everything's done by certified local professionals and backed by a lifetime warranty by Your Home Improvement Company. You can contact them at 866-777-YHIC or go to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. All right, Jace. The next thing I wanted to get to, okay, we did the Randle part. Should we do the where is this team at right now, or should we talk about the Fox and Booker going off against them?
I think it all
Let's do the
kinda-
Fox and Booker thing first. And
I
then
honestly,
let's wrap it up.
I really do think one leaks into the other.
Okay.
But yeah, let's go ahead and start with the Fox and Booker thing.
So obviously, I mean, it's not a real complicated calculus here. De'Aaron Fox
And Shaden
60
Sharp.
on. Yeah, okay. So I saw that too, but
Well, yeah,
but
you saw that
McDaniels
too.
was
were
McDaniel.
there.
No, I saw people talking about that.
Yeah.
As one too, and I went back to look, and Jaden wasn't guarding Shaden Sharp.
Ant
in
was.
that game. Yeah, Ant was. So I'm just
I
saying.
mean,
like,
I think they're two in the same. I know you want to probably bring this into a Jaden conversation, but I think that neither one has been a great on-ball
Sure.
defender.
No,
Like,
no,
I think
I'm-
Ant cranked it up a little bit in the fourth yesterday, but in general, not really.
yeah, no. I would. It's not that I want to make it a Jaden conversation. I
Right.
just want to distinguish between the. I actually am saying that because I don't want to put it all on Jaden.
Yeah.
Because I it still doesn't sound good after Fox had 60 and Booker had 44. But compared to what Jaden was doing like the first 2 weeks of the season, I actually think the Jaden thing is moving in the right direction. Not good. That's not all defensive team behavior like he had a season ago. Or even the season before that when I think he should have made all defense as well. It is the overall perimeter defense. Jaden got a lot of the Fox and Booker matchup. And then Ant is also kind of takes the number 2 guy. But really the only thing that is stopping or slowing a hot player for the Wolves or that the Wolves are playing against right now is when they just double and they put 2 on them.
When Julius Randle loses his shoe.
That's another. So what are the two?
Those are two things they can turn to.
Yeah, right. And that's not what. And the point is they didn't have to turn to that last season.
Correct.
When not that they played a perfect defensive game all the time, and it's not like guys didn't have big games like Booker had last night happened against the Wolves last season. This is the NBA, and even for the number 1 defense, you get cooked sometimes. But this overall just feels different, and you go into a game. And if they were playing somebody better than Toronto, I would go into that next game and be like, yeah, like so-and-so's probably like going to get his.
Right.
Whoever the guy is, that's their kind of main, their sort of main initiator. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out how many bells, alarms we should be ringing about this and how much it is just Ant and Jaden versus the overall kind of context of this team.
I'm curious about why do you say it's shifting in the right direction? I don't think I do think Devin Booker hit a fair amount of difficult shots, but I do think do you remember that playoff series? Like he couldn't dribble. It was no room, no oxygen, no room for life. It was like desperation for him to get a shot off, because he was just trying to get to a spot. And now obviously then game 4 he did have a nice game there, but it was his life was hell. And as much as they were difficult shots, I still felt like he was getting to his spots. Yesterday, I do. And then Fox. Were those even tough shots? I mean, I guess I haven't watched it back, but watching it live, I felt like he was getting wherever he wanted pretty much every possession, and without too much duress. So I guess I'm curious as to see why you would put it in the camp of getting better right now.
So generally speaking, I just think Jaden's compete level is up from the beginning of the season, which is mostly an indictment of the first couple games. I also think De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Maxey, sprint speed guards. Jaden's never had anything for those guys.
I agree.
That's just
the ones who can also hit a jump shot. I think a John Morant, he generally gives a little bit more issues because you don't have to respect the jump.
That's a good point. That can just kind of step in, whether it's sidestep into the 3, or get in and confident. I mean, Fox took a bunch of mid rangers, right?
Yes, but those are his shots. He will always do that.
And so honestly, if they are playing, the Kings again, you gotta really emphasize Nickeil. Or I think De'Aaron Fox is just going to get you, because emphasize Nickeil playing in those minutes, almost doing something weird, like starting him. Otherwise, I think it needs to be Ant. I mean, Jaden just at 6'11" is not. There is ample examples of these quick guards, and it kind of makes sense. They're just different sizes and shapes, and Jaden seems to foul more in those games. Fouled out in the Kings game, right? Yeah.
In overtime, probably.
Yeah, I think in overtime. Yeah. So yeah, maybe not as much there. I just have seen Jaden's generally speaking over the last couple of weeks, fouling going down and his pursuit. When Jaden is pursuing and staying attached, more good things happen, and that's what was really missing for me at the beginning of the season. I don't mean that to say Jaden was a C defensively at the beginning of the season, and now I'm going A-.
Yeah.
I'm just saying It's not gotten worse, and I do think it has gotten better some.
Yeah, I do. I am certainly in the camp of like it wasn't awful in the last couple games, but that's kind of where they've been all season, like playing the C-level defense, and great players will destroy C-level defense, and that's what we're seeing. Like great offensive players, like De'Aaron Fox, like it wasn't like it was a layup line, but it was when you allow really good players to get exactly where they want to get to offensively. And that's like Minnesota just didn't do that last year. Like you did not get the shots you wanted. So like even shots you'd be like, oh, that was a decent look the other team got there, but it wasn't the shot they wanted. I feel like Fox, like obviously Minnesota made a choice to take away everyone else outside of the two, and like they were guarding the pick and roll with two, and that was it. And that was to kind of designed to take away, the Hurters, the Murrays, all that stuff. I would say that probably isn't the way to guard Sacramento right now, because Keegan Murray looks.
Well, you just better be having elite Gobert if you're guarding any pick and roll with two. I don't care who you're playing against. Like if you're playing pick and roll with two, like Gobert's got to be last year, Rudy. And Rudy talked about it. He talked about it after the second Portland game. He's like, put those 2 games on me. Like I'm not there. I wasn't there in these 2 games in Portland. And then last night he talked about being too indecisive defensively. So it's not just Jaden, it's not just Ant. Again, it's like the collective group and the feel of this. Again, particularly if you're trying to guard it with 2. You have less space filled up by having a little bit smaller of a team this year. Like, I think for this team to be great defensively, or frankly, even good, like top 10, top 8, like Jaden and Rudy have to be great defensively this season, because the fact of the matter is you're not getting engaged defense from Ant for 48 minutes. No way. Yeah. Mike is limited. They're putting Mike on the chase and shooters role. Yeah, you got, Dante, I think, is a good defender. Will probably get better and more comfortable as defender. Nikhil's been awesome. Yeah,
Nikhil's been great. Dante just looks a little uncomfortable in everything, I would say. Like defensively, he's not assertive at all right now. Like he's just a guy out there defensively, frankly.
And then Naz is a minus. After Naz was a slight plus at least last season. So there's just
a lot of times he's guarding a 5, which is like, this isn't
fair.
Oh yeah, that's by any way, shape, or form. Like it's not fair to him and his body shape and all the work he's had to do to adjust previously to now be like, all right, now guard the thing that you physically are no longer suited to do whatsoever.
But that's the job.
It's the reality.
I don't agree. Everyone knows it's not my opinion of how I would use Nasri, but I also get it. I get why Finch is going to it, given the 8 guys they got, because the next big that's waiting there behind him is Luka Garza, and I'm pretty sure Nas is not going to be playing worse defense than Luka Garza was if you were to bring him into the defensive fold of this team. So
that would be interesting. Guarding a 5 right now.
Sure.
Somebody who wants to bang with you. Who is going to do it better?
Yeah, I'm more worried about the pick and roll part of it.
I understand.
Which is
but we see
94% of it
of basketball. Yeah. I agree. But there are like certainly times where if it's like a big banging 5 and they got like 2 in a row, I'd be like, well, Luka would probably guard that better. But I agree. Like, you're not going to turn to Luka right now. I understand.
But I think that time's going to come. Like at some point, one of these bigs is going to miss
injury. Right.
Is going to miss time, and I think actually what we've learned in this first chunk of the season is like they're going to need another big body out there. Like I have kind of like the Randle and McDaniels front court when they've gone to it, but if Naz Reid is hurt or Rudy Gobert is hurt, like you absolutely need to put another big body, another big screener for offense into the mix. So I think Luka is going to get his bench opportunity at some point, just like I think, and I've been saying for weeks, like I think Dillingham's going to get and deserve his extended opportunity when a guard gets hurt and any forward gets hurt, like Josh Minot too. Like those things are going to come, and we're going to learn there. But this is the group. This is the group. This is the way this roster was constructed to play and hopefully be the group that's playing, come playoff time. And there is not enough defense right there to be an elite defensive team unless both Jaden and Rudy are elite.
This is what I totally agree with you. And so I'll get to this point first, and then I'll ask you my kind of follow-up that the numbers say like is wrong, basically. But Rudy, that indecisiveness in the drop, like we're seeing it a lot. Like, and I, it's very easily recognizable because we watched it with Cat and Drop for like 2 years, where it's like you're getting so deep that you're not taking anything away. You just caught in no man's land, and with Cat, it was like I just don't think you can figure this drop thing out. And I've never really seen Rudy in it as much as before. Like, it used to be like Rudy is the king of the cat and mouse, but he's just finding it this year, and he probably still is to some degree, but like this year, he's getting himself like too deep in spots, and he's not taking away one, he's not taking away the big, and it's just like, and it's just like awkward in between stages. And Finch said that they're going to have to like simplify things and like maybe unlock Rudy's aggressiveness again, but I'm not sure what the difference, like what change they can make. And that's something that they could probably explain to me, and I just don't get it right now. But I don't feel like anything's overcomplicated. They aren't shifting defenses in between games. Like they've been very slow about adjusting in game to different defensive looks. So I don't know what an oversimplification is going to look like. That will interest me.
Yeah, same. Finch has said stuff like that before, and I've never, then often it hasn't happened.
Like, what is complicated? Like,
I want to let's go through the Rudy thing, because I've done a lot of talking about, and I know you're seeing this too, where this year feels more like the first Gobert year than the second Gobert year, obviously, right? And the first Gobert year was, all right, we got Rudy here. We're going to play in a drop, and that is, you're not going to bring him up. We're just going to rely on filtering everything to Rudy there. And it was indecisive. It was indecisive. And I think, to Rudy's credit, year two, and this we reported on Abedsley, was Rudy's willingness to play up more and kind of find a way in which him and Cat could play similarly, either which one was on the floor at the 5. And they had a diversity of coverages because they could always fall back to the drop if the opponent went to it. But Rudy up looked decisive and effective. And it wasn't in between. I mean, I remember I was just like ripping through I think it was the Chicago game or Portland game, pick and roll. It was red team. And Rudy, like, everyone was in no man's land. Yeah. And it was like I could tell they told you to get up here, but you're not comfortable in it. I saw somebody comment on something last night. Obviously, we were at the game, so I wasn't watching it. But like the microphone under the rim picked up Mike Conley saying to Rudy, like, you are supposed to be up here. Yeah, you are up here. And so that's the indecision that is happening with Rudy, and that's what he's calling himself out on. I get that, and he deserves some blame there. But what's also happening is the low man rotation protection. If Rudy overextends himself up, Julius Randle is not executing that. Naz Reid is not executing that. Nobody else is doing it.
They're not there. I mean, it's not like got there late. Like it's oftentimes like, whoa, what is this? Like it's not there at all. So like
cling a dunk.
Yeah, it's like is this communication? Is it like these guys being like, oh, I forgot we were in this? Like, I don't know, but I agree 100%. Like the defense is not on a string at all, and that makes individual guys look dumb sometimes. And it can be because it's like, well, the other guy wasn't there, so now I just look like I just gave this up, even though somebody else is supposed to be there.
And Rudy has such a hero complex defensively, in a good way. I don't mean that, but like that he's going to try to do more than that he can, which leads to being in between and sort of nowhere. And again, these are the things that Rudy said.
If you don't have confidence that your low man's going to be there to help, then you are probably going to be like, I can't be aggressive in this coverage. Exactly. I can't be up where I'm supposed to be. I'm going to be kind of up, but kind of not, because I don't trust what's behind me. Like defense, especially in the NBA, like it's got to be total trust of like, I can confidently do this because I know this guy's behind me. So I can go full force in what I'm supposed to do. Then they know where they're supposed to be. And that's where we're on a string and we're all doing things the right way. And that is now it's properly executed. If there's any doubt and you aren't fully committed to what you're doing, then NBA players are going to make you look really dumb.
I just because I did clip this during the game last night. This is just first quarter. I titled this "Who is Low Man?" There's just 3 buckets right here. Watch. So Rudy's coming up here and he doesn't want to leave it. Just watch Randle in these situations. They don't know right there.
Yeah,
like they both go down there and okay, now that's a layup for Booker on a mid-range shot. This one they'll go down in transition again, and it's just I actually don't think it's Randle's not trying. It just doesn't. It's not clear to them who is supposed to be the rim guy, and it's not just Randle. It's Rudy too. So Randle's thinking here like, all right, this is me. But then Rudy just drops like that, and then Randle gets lost. I
wonder if those are the concepts.
This is the third and final one, but go ahead.
I wonder if these are the concepts that Finch talked about that other NBA teams are really going to, and it's it is the off ball, like it's the wing, like off ball curls from the 3-point line. And I wonder, and we have seen more of that. And I do wonder, Finch said, like, a lot of NBA teams are kind of going to these different actions, and these next 3 days will be very important for us.
This one
to,
is
like,
that. Yep.
Yeah, to how do we figure out how to guard these things? Because, like, there has been a lot of confusion there, and I do think they see that as, like, something that's consistently getting kind of exposed.
It's this part of it is a Randle and Gobert getting on the same page.
Right.
And I don't know enough about basketball to know how difficult that is to do in this limited time that we've had, particularly not having had a preseason, or a training camp to really get to it, which is yet again another similarity of the first Rudy season, where Rudy wasn't playing in training camp and Karl was sick. So they looked completely discombobulated as a team when they got out there at the beginning of the year. Of course, they kind of found that a little bit more as time, and Karl and Rudy got a better chemistry, particularly the second year. I don't want to just assume, though, because it got better with Kat and Rudy, that it will get better with Randle and Rudy. It will get better with Randle and Rudy if they get on the same page about what this is. And I saw them, like, after all those clips I showed just right there were in the first quarter. Finch calls a timeout, and those two are frustrated, but actually, like, talking it through.
Yeah.
It wasn't like angry. You saw that, right, when they were going over to the bench there. That's the thing to me, man. Like, because so much of this defense being not exposed is going to be about Randle being what Kat and Nas were last year, which is, an above average defender for a big. And if Randle and Rudy get more on the same page, I think we get a little bit less Rudy indecision, which leads to, dividends elsewhere.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that Minnesota was, like, as far as, like, the difference between the number 1 defense and number 2 defense, like, the best defense there's been in a long time in the NBA, like so significantly better than all of their peers that it was almost like historic. And it was because they were able to marry really great individual defenders with really great team defense. And right now, like, you can still have the really great individual defenders, and certainly we can talk about, like, the consistency of those individual defenders. No, they're not bringing on a night-to-night basis, but the team defense is not good right now. Like just the communication, the help, like who's supposed to be doing what, knowing what everybody's assignment is, and everybody executing those assignments. It's not happening. And so that's how you end up with this. Here's what I would wonder, because people bring it up, and I look at it too, and I'm like, Rudy's individual defensive rating is not that different than what it was last year. So what is your thought? And when we look at this defense, and I think it's not that great, I think it looks like a C-level defense, but Rudy's defensive rating, even after yesterday, is a 107.6, and last year it was 106.6, and that's not that different, and both numbers are very good. And so that just, like, if you looked at that, you're like, oh, every problem is just when Rudy's not on the court, even though your eyes don't tell you that. So what do you read into that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that probably some of that is, I'd be curious to see what they're shooting from 3-point range in the Rudy time.
I did that yesterday, and it was not, when Rudy's on the court, it's like 35.6, which is almost exactly what it was last year. So that is also not one. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the classic, like, the defense has been so bad when Rudy isn't out there that we are holding on to that emotion and remembering that emotion when something goes wrong when Rudy is out there. Does that make sense?
Inevitably happens anyway,
Yeah,
like, if it's 106.6, that means teams are still scoring more than a point per possession. So, like, you're like, oh, gave up another bucket.
Right. And I just think that's the biggest difference from last season, in terms of, like, the bigs and defense, is there wasn't a big defensive drop off when you went from Rudy and Kat out there to Kat and Kyle Anderson. It was just, that was really good when it was Kat and Kyle Anderson out there, and then Nas, and that was often Kat at the 5, Kyle Anderson at the 4, and then Nas at the 3, kind of chasing, guarding more of a perimeter player in that situation. So, I mean, without having had time to really think through this, I'll think through this. Somehow I'm gonna have to do 3 podcasts before the next game, so probably gonna talk about it again. But it's good to highlight that the effectiveness of the Wolves defense with Rudy out there has not been as bad. I think what it is for me is I'm watching the bad Gobert stuff, and it's often happening when Randle's on the floor.
Sure.
And the non-Rudy minutes always have Randle on the floor. So I'm probably taking out a little bit of my perception of the bad defense on Rudy when really it should be applied to Randle, who has been, I don't know, Nas hasn't been very good. I don't want to say Randle's been the worst defensive pick, but it's just a huge drop off when they have Reed or Randle at the 5 out there.
Yeah, but all the individual guys, it's Jaden, Nas, and Randle who are all above 112 defensively. And then Ant's almost at 112. And then it is like the guys who are out there, it's Nickeil and Rudy are the best defensive pairing by a mile. So that's where you're like, you got to lean into Nickeil. I kind of agree with that. Like those two defensive rating is like 93 point something. And they play a fair amount of minutes together.
A lot. Yeah.
They're both on the same page. Nickeil is such a relentless pursuiter. Like you talked about, Jaden's has improved. Like Nikhil's never wanes. Like that. He just, what you're getting from him every single night in terms of effort. Like it's such a great pick and roll pairing in that sense because Rudy can actually play drop because Nickeil is really an elite, like, drop defending guy on the ball because he's just there. He's a gnat on you. Like he's not going to give you those
Velcro, man.
He's not going to be 3 feet behind you trailing because he's so good at navigating the screen. And then if he does like get caught, he is going to be right back in there as fast as possible. Like I do think that is like if they're gonna commit to Rudy long term, which like they signed that extension with him, it's like I don't see how Nickeil could go anywhere because I mean, but that's a conversation for I know we can't get into that topic, but yeah. Let's get into like I'm gonna touch on this. Like you said, there's more pods to do. They don't play again until Thursday. But we talked about where are we at with this team right now? Like I think we both feel like this just looks, and we expect it to improve, and the roster says it absolutely should improve. But on a night-to-night basis, it looks like a 500 basketball team. It really does. Like Phoenix yesterday, that compilation of players had gotten beaten by 16 and 23 in their previous 2 games, and those were against good teams for sure.
Yeah.
But that Phoenix roster that got on the court yesterday is not a good basketball team. And Sacramento is an average basketball team. And obviously they got blown out twice by Portland. And they lost to Miami, who's an average basketball team. Like it just looks like average basketball right now. And I guess my question would be, Finch said, yep, we're just trying to dig out wins right now until we find that rhythm, which we know we will. What is your confidence, Al? You said you can't just assume it's always going to get better. Where are you at in terms of like, I know this will get better because they'll find it? Because for some teams they don't, and I know Minnesota did, like you said, like after the Rudy trade, eventually it took a long time. Where's your confidence level at that they're going to get there, and what do you think it's going to look like when they do?
Well, it's kind of distant for me right now because I went into this stretch of the last 5-6 games being like, this is a really easy run. And
right. We talked about that, I think, on like the last week's podcast, or no, 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, you pointed at that and said they're going to lose like 1 game, maybe 2.
Right. And so, that's what I think. That's what I think probably should have happened. But what I also, and I don't even know if this is a fair excuse for him, but it's the excuse they're making. That road trip, like, roasted them from a fatigue standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I agreeing with the same thing. Yeah, yesterday was Phoenix's 4th game of a 4-game road trip, and they played Friday night on the road. And Minnesota's like afternoon game. We just got back from a long road trip. That's what's going to happen. We weren't awake. It's like, why was Phoenix awake? Like I hate those excuses, and
I hate them too. But do you think they are playing fatigued? Do they look fatigued when you're watching them play? Whether or not you think it's fair or not to be fatigued.
No, I think they look complacent. I really do. I don't think they have like the same teeth. I don't think they do on hardly ever on a night-to-night basis. I don't think it's fatigue. They look this way every game. The start of the Portland trip looked like that. Right. What do you mean? The first game of the road trip looked like that. So what is that? How is that fatigue?
I'm thinking about I'm putting my Finch hat on, and I'd be like, if these motherfuckers are saying that they're tired right now, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to play 8 guys anymore.
Yeah.
And then I don't want you to be bitching when your minutes are down to 14.
Yeah.
That's what, if I heard that, I would be like, I don't think you should be tired right now. This is our first, whatever bad stretch of the travel, whatever of the season. Well, if you guys are tired, and me, I've been on the opposite side of it. I'm like, play the 8 guys.
Yeah. I don't make sure you're confident in that playoff rotation before you dip into anything else. I have too, frankly.
But that would be for the the many people who might be right, who I don't agree with, who want to give Josh Minot 15 minutes a game or Rob Dillingham 15 minutes a game. If I was one of those Twitter warriors right now, I would say, well, Anthony Edwards said he was sleepy.
Yeah.
And then I would point to Portland and I go, Anthony Edwards also looked sleepy in that game, and so did a lot of other people. So I don't know. This is just, it's my opinion and it's my theory that you should lean into those 8 guys. But what's it, 14 games in?
Yeah,
14 games in. Yeah, like we're getting pretty close to the point of time where I feel like I should be feeling better about this. And they as a team should be feeling better about this. And I leave these last 4 games again, and I said at the top, like 2 convincing losses and 2 kind of unconvincing wins against the Kings and the Suns. I mean, that Kings game could have easily gone the other direction. And then, if Randle doesn't hit that buzzer beater at the end last night, they got a couple of nice, as we were texting about last night, got a couple of nice calls from the refs on the offensive fouls that Allen and Plumlee committed. Like, there's a world here that isn't a reality that isn't too far away. That is this team on what would that be then? Like a 5-game losing streak or something like that.
And now people will be like, that could happen to anybody. But it's true, and it's, it is. Like, basketball is decided by 1 or 2 plays in a lot of games. Last year's team created a massive margin for error. This team doesn't have one. But I'm with you. I honestly kind of wonder where Finch's confidence is at. And I don't know. I really don't. Just from gauging the press conferences, performances like yesterday, like last year, he would have come out and chastised him. He would have been like, that wasn't good enough, blah, blah, blah. That needs to be way better. He's such in a spot right now where I think he is unsure of it, and he's trying to maintain this team's confidence where he's like just really proud of him. Like, I mean, we found stops at the end. It's like, they called offensive fouls where Mike tripped over Jaden. And it was like, and then they called an offensive foul on Grayson Allen. It's like, those were the stops he came up with. Like Booker missed a wide open 3 and then Tyus missed a floater. It's like, those are the stops he came up with. And I think he knows that too. It's just like trying to instill some confidence, because I don't know if the belief is high enough to
it's a different
drag
bar.
This team down right now.
I think he has this team at a lower bar of what it is right now than he did a year ago. Not that I don't think he can't believe. I do believe he thinks it can get up there. Yeah, but I think it didn't take long after the trade and some of the confusion that came with that and losing the continuity, whatever, to kind of be like, this is going to take a while. So I do think part of him is genuinely like, well, thank God, at least we dug this out. We dug this out and won.
And I think that should be, but I think that message, he's saying that after a lot of games where in the past, like when he was truly confident in the team and what they could do in that moment, he was much more like, this wasn't good. Like highlighting the things that weren't good. Where right now, even like when they get drubbed by Portland, he's like, this wasn't great, but I mean, he's just not going into that mode at all. And I think he's thinking, I probably can't, because I'm not sure that this team right now is built to handle that. I think they're all thinking like, we have to celebrate the successes and maybe like mute the negatives, because we're trying to build some continuity here and trying to build some positive vibes and not get this thing down like too deep into the mud. So I think there's a little bit of like a lack of confidence in what it is in general right now across the board.
I agree, man. And yeah, it's just 3 days off. I guess that is an important thing, right? Huge period. And and I remember, and Finch has said that before when they've had stretches like this, and there's been times where they really have reacclimated after having 3-4 days off in a row. Actually, I'm gonna look that up. Like, I remember maybe it was that first year they had like 4 days off, and it was like kind of rough, and they got back on some sort of stretch. I think, but partially because my computer's kind of dying. We got to wrap this up. I can't plug it in while I have all these other things plugged in.
Gotcha.
Let's wrap this up with our prize picks for tonight's Monday Night Football game. What do you have, Jace?
You lead it.
Well, it always happens where I pick these through, but before they change. I had Rico.
I had it pulled up on my app, and it's gone now. So hang on, so I just got to refresh the app. Yeah. Go ahead.
I had Rico Dowdle to have less than 13 rush attempts. He's only had more than 12 once all season. And then there was another one on here, which was CeeDee Lamb and Tank Dell to combine for a touchdown. Gotcha. That was my other one that I had there. So maybe I'll find that. I'll find that later. You can say what your ones were from before,
okay.
if you remember.
I still have them. I found them. I remember what they were. Nico Collins, over 71.5 receiving yards. That guy is a monster. And I think he was so close to playing last week that I'm pretty confident in his health for this week, like 8 days later. So I think he's probably back healthy, and like he's just a dominant player. And then I would go with Jalen Tolbert, over 25.5 receiving yards. I just like Jalen Tolbert as a player.
Just give the ball to the good players. Yeah,
I do think he's not like a main target of their offense, but I do think their passing offense will even against Houston look better tonight because as like a Cooper Rush thing, like if you get another week under center, another week of prepping for you, like as a backup, I think the more time you get out there, the more confident you are, and he's been competent enough in the past.
As always, prize picks for the NFL games. I think those are actually fun. Those are the ones that me and Jace text each other about. Like, hey, what do you got here on this one?
Yeah.
But also, for those of you who are just maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week, no Wolves games. You want to check out some NBA lineups on here as well. You can do that at PrizePicks.com on the PrizePicks app. Again, if you're new to PrizePicks, use the promo code Dane, and your account will be credited with $50 when you make your first $5 lineup. Jace, it'll be interesting for us to circle back here in a week. We'll be talking
about the Boston game.
Yeah, but like honestly, that's an opportunity too.
Yep.
Like and if there's one thing I know about this team, it's
they get up for big.
They get what I was going to say is they do what Ant does.
Yeah,
and Ant gets up for big games, and
so
there's been a lot.
Yeah, they both do. I mean, like those two have kind of married as like a barometer of this team. I think, especially defensively, and defense is the barometer for for their ceiling anyway. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Toronto, obviously a lighter opponent, but a road game on Thursday. We'll see what this team does with 3 days off here. 3 days off of games. They'll practice on Tuesday and Wednesday. Chris and I, and then Britt and I will be back to talk a little bit more about them before that Raptors game. And then we'll see what happens on Sunday against the Celtics as well. I meant if we had more time to talk with Jace a little bit about his Nickeil Alexander-Walker feature. It's really good. And Nickeil is the story of the season, the best story of the year. I'd really recommend going over to the Pioneer Press and reading Jace's piece on Nickeil Alexander-Walker too. And I saw you retweeted something today. You guys got a deal going on for Black Friday?
Yeah, it's $3 for a full year of digital subscription, and I know you can cancel anytime. I think it might be one of those things where you cancel it and it runs through, which is like, hey, if you want to get it, cancel it, whatever, like, and then you get it for the year and don't worry about the renew. I don't know about that, but $3 for a year for Black Friday on our website for like full access to it, which is like, usually like the Conley corners and this, like the bigger things all go behind paywalls. Even some of the gamers do. So like, if you actually want to like check these things out that we talk about here, like it's $3 to read all of it for the next year for the full season, all of that.
I seriously really recommend it, and it's $3. And I know the feeling. It's another subscription. It's whatever.
I agree.
But like, if you're listening to this podcast, you listen to them to the ones with Jason, with Chris, and all these guys. I really do think you will get a better texture for who these guys are as writers and reporters. So check that out. Coming up, next will be Chris Hine and I will go on Wednesday morning. Until then, he's Jace. Follow him on Twitter at Jace Frederick. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. We'll talk to you Wednesday. Until then, peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.